folks, and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. And tonight we got a great show for you all with my co-host David Null, Hawkeye Two Feathers. Thank you for being here with me tonight.
And greetings, everybody. We love you all for coming and sharing the evening with us. And we greet you with the love and the honor of the infinite Creator. And thank you very much. We hope you're safe and sound wherever you are. And thank you, Robert. Another day in the Milky Way.
That's right. That's right.
A crazy day in the Milky Way.
Sorry, everybody. We were just having a few little computer problems. We got Elderberry in the house, and hey, there you are. We got Susie Q. Hello, awesome people, she says. Meaning me and you. We're awesome. And we got Scotty Boy come to join us. Hey, Scotty Boy. And then we got, I see, what else we got? Susie Q and Elderberry and Scotty Boy. And, well, somebody's watching us. It says there's one person watching us, at least. So, welcome. Another day in the neighborhood. There's Elderberry. All right, so we're back. We're good. We got stuff going on tonight. We're going to be talking about Bradford's War. This is the French and Indian War. I didn't get enough studying done with the other one, so I had to switch to this. There's just not enough time in the day, you know. I got so many things to do, gardening and work and more gardening and all that other stuff. So there you go. Hello, Pod Joe, Richard Red, and everybody in chat. Mark the Arc Spark. Hey, thank you for coming on tonight. Good to see you all. And so anyway, tonight we're going to be talking about Bradford's War. Bradford, who was Bradford? He was a military British officer. And what's the big thing with him is that, well, you know, he fought in many British campaigns, and this was in the years leading up to the War of Independence. And you got to remember, it was the British running the colonies, and the British troops were some of the most well-trained troops on the planet at the time. The British military was to be feared. You know, they had well-trained troops. They shipped them in. They fought in other wars. But they fought a different kind of war. And this war here, or this battle, the Battle of the Monongahela, was fought, with these experienced, well-trained troops that had fought over in Ireland, who'd fought the French. They were well-trained, put it that way. They were to be feared. And the French knew it, and in New France they were coming down, which was Canada, but the Indians did not side with the British so much. They were for the French, and of course the most of the Indians had moved, or a lot of them now had moved across the Appalachian Mountains, which was like a protective barrier between the colonies and the wild frontier. And it's hard to imagine that parts of Ohio and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan and all of those areas up there were the wild frontier, but they were wild. And the French, this all takes place during the 1750s, you should say. Let's see if I got some pictures. I always got good pictures to present.
Did you say 50s?
Yeah, 18.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, let me catch up on all of this here. Let me see what I can present. Actually, yeah. So it's because remember, this was before the War for Independence. People were joining up with, gosh darn, Mark, you're gonna make me laugh. That's a funny one. Susie Q, she's gonna grab some supper. Well, I could use some supper. I just got home from work a little bit ago. Anyway, we're gonna just do an outline of all of this, but we're gonna put up some stuff here. Let's start out with this guy. Just give me a second here. And now this guy here, he might have been at the thing. The more I searched for all of this, the less I could find. Yeah, really. That's kind of how it was. It was like, what about the Battle of Monongahela? And it's like, it's nowhere to be found, you know. Or I mean, it's all about the British, but it's like the Indian part is left out. But I do believe that a guy like this, he was there, Corn Planter. Some of these other chiefs that we've talked about could have been there, Pontiac or who was those other guys, Logan, and you know, some of these other ones. Oh, there you go. I was on Robert B's channel and didn't realize it. Sorry, Scotty boy. Yeah, he'll show up at the right channel. Thank you. I'm working on it. Been gardening and mowing the lawn with the push mower. Yes, that's what I've been doing. And I got a big ass lawn too. Like Chief Bottle Washer. Yeah. I'm sure Chief Bottle Washer was there too. Anyway, I started out trying to find out about Corn Planter, and I came up with it was about Corn Planter, at least in the old book that I have. I got one of those old books from the 1800s, and it does start out talking about Corn Planter, and it says Corn Planter and Braddock's defeat. Now, we're just going to go with this, and in my old book, there's a lot more detail all of this. You know, the Corn Planter was a warrior at Braddock's defeat, but whether a chief, I do not learn, it says. And you got to remember, these are old words. It's an old book. We will, however, according to our design, give an account of the signal disaster of this connection. The French, having established themselves upon the Ohio within the territory claimed by the English and built a fort upon it, and low down and confluence of that river of the Monongahela, the later were determined to be disposed of them. And this was undertaken by the forces of about 2,200 men under the command of General Edward Braddock. With about 1,300 of these, he proceeded on an expedition, leaving the rest to follow under Colonel Dunbar. So, what brings us up to all of this? We have a guy named George Washington. And George Washington so much wanted to be, into the British Army. So we're going to start with George Washington. And George Washington and his buddy were commissioned by the governor of Pennsylvania, the colony, because the colony of Pennsylvania was given a tract of land, a huge tract of land that went over the Appalachian Mountains and spilled over into the Ohio Valley. But the French were building forts along the river. And I do probably have a picture of the river. But anyway, they were building forts. They had built 4 forts or so, and they were now building one. Let's see this picture. Yeah, here we go. You know, I always got good pictures of this. Here they built along Lake Erie, because remember, everything north was New France, which was the Canadians. They built Fort Lebeau, I guess it is, Fort Prescott, Isle, and Fort Malachute. I ain't French, so. And then there was Fort Duquesne. Okay, well, this was the 4th fort, and this was really getting into the territory of the English, the British, I should say. What the problem was is they sent the governor of Pennsylvania sent George Washington and his buddy over there and told them to go to Fort Duquesne, and due to British proclamation, they were to pack their things and leave. And you know what the French told them? The French said, "Ha, get the heck out of here." So they packed they shipped them out and said, get out, don't come back, we don't want you. And George Washington and his buddy hightailed it back. They had a bunch of personal assistants with them, which were Indians. And it's real weird, but the more I read, it seems like the Indians kept turning on the British. You'd have a group of Indians working for you, and then all of a sudden one would turn and try to kill you because he was actually a spy for the French, or he was working with the French, and they just couldn't stand the British, put it that way. Even in Braddock's troop that he marched with, he only had a small handful of Indians. We'll get to that in a little bit. But anyway, so George Washington was sent packing. He went back, and of course, they said, this isn't going to work. We're going to send out a big military army, and they're going to go defeat the troops. Well, they did. They packed their things, and they sent them out, and didn't work out so well. As you can see, they would have been on horseback. They would have had fine trained troops, and if you can see in the background here, they were bringing cannons of different sizes, and those cannons on big wheels are pulled by horses and stuff like that. And of course, an army pulling artillery like that to defeat a fort. Now, back in England, this would have been a normal situation where you drag your military items along, you get to the fort, your guys line up, and you fight like crazy, right? It just didn't happen quite that way. Although Braddock was well trained, he'd been in many battles, he just didn't quite understand the logistics of it. But in order to get over the Appalachian Mountains, he had to make a road. And as you can see here, this is Braddock's road. Now, if the one thing he did win in this whole entire fight was this road that he carved out, which, went through the Appalachian Mountains to get to the other side. And they carved out this huge road to haul that military equipment. And he did. He hauled it there. Unfortunately, you're in the mountains and you have a narrow road and high hills, and that was his demise, as we can see. So here's the military road that he built. And if you can see this, it goes along and Braddock's field, and this is where he would have ended up. But it goes through the Cumberland Gap and through here. And I don't know if anybody lives out this way that would know these areas, but he made quite the road. He had to make it passable. But when he gets to the end, the French at Fort Duquesne, they didn't have a big military troop until just days before Braddock's troops showed up. Most of their army was consisting of Indians, made up from the Ojibways, the Ottawas, the Potawatomis, most of those tribes that lived up in that area, and they were supporting the French.
Now, let me interrupt, toss something in. Now, if you were an Indian back in those days, what would prompt you to go with these guys? I mean, just thinking. It was like, well, did he offer him money? Because, in other places, they'd offer the local people, mercenaries, they'd pay them or offer them something. So yes. I often wonder what the deal was that would convince the Indians to to follow these crazy British guys with cannons and stuff through the mountain. And the Indians probably knew their way through the mountains, because they lived there. But what prompted them, what promoted them, to go to war that way?
Well, first off, the French were giving the Indians guns and ammo.
Okay, so that's a biggie. Ooh, we'll give you guns and ammo if you come fight with us.
Yes, and
Okay.
the fact that the French weren't there really to divide up the land and settle with lots of immigrants. They weren't doing that. They were, most of the French that went over there were entrepreneurs. They didn't have a lot of people, and they weren't carving up the land like the British were. The British were colonizing the land, literally attacking the Indians, drawing up a treaty, and then, hey, settling it with our farmers, and growing crops and cutting down the trees and things like that. Whereas the French were kind of intermingling, and there wasn't very many of them, but they were good traders. And since the Indians on that side had a lot to trade, like the beaver and the buffalo and the deer and hides and things like that they were really interested in.
I wonder what would have happened if the French would have taken over versus the British. Would we have had the Boston Tea Party? Would we have had all these other things? But I know I'm throwing. I'm in a weird mood tonight, so I'm off the chain on some of this. But I mean, back I often try to take myself back. What were those people feeling, thinking, and whatever? And you wonder, after all these years, what if the French had been our bosses and not the English?
Yeah. Well, Scotty Boy points out a good thing. He says the French-Indian War. I thought they were fighting. Yes, see, that's how little we know about history. Yes. The French-Indian War was because the Indians and the French were fighting together, and the Indians didn't like the British because the British were moving in all the time, and they were, conquering the land. They were cutting down the trees. They were establishing.
But you know what? The French are still white people.
Yes.
Yes, so what were the? I don't know. It's an odd time for me to interrupt this, but. What made the difference? Were the French friendlier? Were they not as, something? Yes. They weren't cutting down the trees like the British were. I mean, so they were less it sounds like they were less invasive to the country than the British were. Would that be a proper, short-term assessment?
Yes, exactly.
The British were cutting down all the trees and everything, so the French were much less invasive. Well, good for the French. Maybe they should have won.
They were less invasive. He says Elderberry says the Indians were guerrilla fighters. The British couldn't deal with that. Yes, this was a turning point battle. Braddock's War was a turning point battle of how all battles after it changed. Because of this attack. The French were allied with the Indians. The British had no support of the Indians, at least not very much. Most Indian tribes were allied with the French. Braddock was known for saying, he had said, no savages should inherit land. That there is a big digger in your throat, kind of in your back stabbing.
I'd go to war for that.
Yeah, if you knew the British are coming, they're just going to take your land, and you've been living here for thousands of years, and you got no inheritance to it. And the French are saying, "Hey, fight with us, and we'll, you can have the land. All we want is you to, get the beaver and the hides and whatever."
And the thing is that the British still don't get it. Is that it wasn't. It belonged to the Indians first. This idea that, well, we came over and it's ours now. The new land, and it's like, but we're still living here, dude. So, but anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Lucky's got it right on point. French traded more fairly than the British. The only French the Indians did not like were the Jesuits.
Oh, we still don't like them suckers.
Yeah. Um,
There's one calls himself the Pope.
yeah. The French lived more harmonious with the tribes. Yes, that's totally true. And then, so you know, I mean, you're going to team up with the guy who's treating you like a human being, or not trying to come up and take your land and destroy your villages and burn your towns and things like that. I would have, teamed up with the French myself.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, here comes Braddock with his army. He had 20. This is where it gets confusing because let's see. I'm going to go to another screen here. So I'm reading, from, of course, Wikipedia, and they just kind of highlight things. And as you can see, in July 8th, Braddock's force was on the land owned by Chief Scout Lieutenant John Fraser. That evening, the Native Americans sent a delegation to the British to request a conference. You notice that the Native Americans sent the delegation. It wasn't the French or anybody. Braddock sent Washington and Fraser, and the Native Americans asked the British to halt their advances so they could attempt to negotiate a peaceful withdrawal by the French from Fort Duquesne. Both Washington and Fraser recommended this to Braddock, but he basically said, hell no. So, Braddock was a real good military guy, and he thought, I got all these men, and I'm going to switch to this old book here about how many men.
And he's arrogant.
He is. He's got
many of the British soldiers were above arrogant. I mean, they just, no, we're here. We're going to, yeah, arrogant. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, let's see. Corn Planter was a warrior of Braddock's defeat. It tells it in this book, and I could not find it anywhere else. Corn Planter was a warrior of Braddock's defeat, but whether a chief or not, they did not learn according to the design, and they gave the account of a single disaster in the connection. The French, having established themselves upon the Ohio within the territory claimed by the English, so now you got overlapping territories claimed by two different countries, and built a fort upon it, and low down as the confluence of the river with the Monongahela, and later were determined to dispose of them. This was an undertaking by a force of about 2,200 men under the command of General Edward Braddock.
That's a lot of guys back then.
Yes, but here's where he made the mistake. Actually, I don't know if he made a mistake, but there was a lot of mistakes made. And put it this way, there was a lot of mistakes made because he had an overwhelming amount of men. He thought he couldn't be defeated, I suppose. And like you said, they were arrogant. And with about 1,300 men of these, he proceeded on an expedition, leaving the rest to follow under Colonel Dunbar. Though nearly the whole course of his march, he was watched by spies from Fort Duquesne, the name of the French fort in Ohio. And the earliest intelligence of his movements were carried there by the Indian runners. And you remember, those Indians, they could run day and night without breaking a sweat, and through the woods like a deer almost, And
think about 1,300 men tromping through the countryside, that's not made for 1,300 men to go traipsing through. You know what I mean?
But see, that's what I was saying. One accomplishment he did, they were making a road as they went.
Right, but that's my point. They were making a lot of noise. It wasn't like they were hiding.
Well,
they knew the British were coming.
Well, yeah, exactly. They knew the British were coming, and the British didn't care because they were like, hey, we got 1,300 guys here, whatever. Come on, bring it on,
We're gonna get you.
Yeah. When it was told among the Indians that the army was marching upon them in solid columns, notice solid columns, they laughed with surprise and said to one another, we'll shoot him down all one like a pigeon. And it will always be acknowledged that the Indians were not mistaken. The French, it seems, formed but a small part of the force that defeated Braddock's army. The Indians planned and executed the operations chiefly themselves, and their whole force is said not to have exceeded 400 men. But from the accounts of the French themselves, it was evident there were about 600 Indians and not far from 250 French who marched out to meet Braddock. And so, like I said, it's you got the 1,300 men, and then you got probably 600, 700, 800, maybe about 850 guys all together, most of them being Indians.
And these Indians they know where they are because they've lived there, and the British do not. Okay. Yeah. So the guerrilla warfare, hiding in the bushes, it was easy for them to ambush the British.
Yes. And the thing is that they were hauling heavy artillery. That was the big problem. They just crossed a river. They were going to get the Indians and the French were trying to get to the river to ambush them as they cut across the river, which would have probably been even better, but they didn't make it there on time. So what happened is just in your mind here, we're going to say, the Indians and the French, they lined up on the sides of this road. And you remember the road is kind of in the middle of this little valley, so the sides are quite high, so you got the advantage of being up, and then you got a narrow road, and you're hauling equipment, and the equipment is in the center of the road, and your troops are marching on the sides of the equipment, right? So you're flanking your equipment, and you're hauling heavy wagons and marching alongside it, in the hills, which is harder to do too, right? Anyway, they were in full uniform. There you go. The eventful morning, they were in full uniform and marched in the most perfect order, dreamed of nothing but easy conquest. And there again, arrogance. And about noon, they arrived at their second crossing place, which was distant only 10 miles from Fort Duquesne. It was here that the Indians and the French had intended to commence their attack, but owing to some delay, they did not arrive in time, and therefore took a position further in advance and waited the approach of the English. The French were commanded by this Burgeot, I guess his name is, who had his lieutenant Dumas, and the place chosen for the ambush, they were going to ambush them, was best possible, and the Indians never showed greater courage and firmness. It is said that the French, that they were for some time opposed to going out to fight the English, but after several conditions from Burgeot, they consented, and the Indian account is that we have stated before. Immediately on crossing the river, the army formed in 3 divisions, which was the order of march. A plan or kind of prairie which the army had to cross extended from the river to about half a mile, and then its route lay over an ascending ground, a very gentle ascending covered with trees and high prairie grasses. As the commencement of this elevation began, a ravine, oh boy, like I said, a ravine, which, as it extended up the rising ground, formed a figure resembling nearly that of a horseshoe, and about 150 yards in extent. Into this enclosure, 2 divisions of the army had passed when the attack began. Now, just imagine in your mind, you have to pass through this narrow ravine with your army. You're just setting yourself up to fail, but you're relying on their ego to, we're the fine British. We can't be defeated. Look at, we got guns and cannons and all this good stuff.
And back then there was an arrogance with the British that you could walk on. I mean, they literally, their arrogance, I'm British and I'm a fighter and I've been trained and you can't, we're invincible. And that's what they thought, and they had not met the American Indian who was defending their own land.
That's right. Well, now you got George Washington, and he shows up. Now, George Washington was born in America. He was a surveyor, and he was still kind of young. But he was joining this band and trying to be a British soldier and doing his job. And Washington had urged upon the general, because remember, Washington had went up this way earlier trying to make the Indians surrender already. And the general of what's going on, and he said to the general, hey, you better send out scouting parties to avoid a surprise. That the general would take no advice. He said on the occasion, he blitterously replied that it was high times for a young buckskin to teach a British general how to fight. Talk about ego.
Yep.
See, this Washington at that time was like 20 or 22. So he, and you got Braddock, who'd been in many wars and fights and stuff like that. And he's probably pushing 45 or 50. So, he's not going to take anything from a young 20-year-old. You know what I mean?
And George Washington, at 20 years old, living in the Appalachian Mountains and so forth, knew how to hunt. He'd been hunting squirrels and deer and stuff. And so he was a frontiersman.
He was.
Simply because that's where he grew up. So anyway, take that into consideration. Where Braddock was, he was of my idea says, and he was all dressed up, and he was the general, and he hadn't got his feet wet in a long time, So.
Yep. Well, you got to remember, George Washington was a surveyor before this, and surveying was one of the most dangerous jobs you could have in the day. Because you went out to survey the land with the Indians and you're by yourself. You maybe had 2-3 guys or whatever, and they could pick you off. And the Indians knew that you're out there to survey the land, and next comes the settlers, I wouldn't want those surveyors to come either. Such was his contempt for scouting parties that he accepted that cold indifference of services of George Croghan, who had offered himself with 100 Indians for the important business of scouring the woods. The consequence was the Indians, one after another, left the army in this march, much to regret of Washington and other provincial officers who knew how to appreciate their value. So the Indians that were with Braddock, like I said, the Indians didn't really like the British, and they knew this was a bad idea, and if they just deserted. You got 100 Indians going out, and they're all just taking off. They're like, we're out of here. Where'd the scouts go? They left, man. They know we're going to die. When the first division of the army had nearly ascended the hill at the rising ground was called. The Indians broke the silence of the morning, with an appalling yell, and the same moment poured a most deadly fire from their coverts among the devoted column. The first shocks were sustained with firmness, and the fire was returned, by which a few Indians were killed, and the French commander in charge, Lebeau, was mortally wounded. It was said that the Indians now began to waver, but for a good conduct of Mr. Dumas, second in command, would have fled, but by his expertise order was restored, and the firing, which had not ceased, was redoubled. The advance columns was Commander Lieutenant Colonel Gage. So Gage took 300 men. He was Braddock sent him ahead with 300 men to lead the pack, right? And he was attacked. Now remember, you're on a narrow road in a ravine, and you got 300 men. Colonel Gage, he was attacked, and they started to retreat. The column was about 100 yards in advance of the second, which had just began to ascend the hill when the attack began. So you got people at the top of the hill getting fired upon. They're turning back. You got people at the bottom of the middle of the hill, and they see the 300 guys coming back at them, getting fired and killed on. And you're on this narrow road, and all of a sudden you start turning back, and
it was chaos. So, you got these guys hauling butt turned around going, oh, there's a bunch of wild Indians up there, and they've been fired upon, and they run into the guys behind them.
Exactly.
I mean, literally run into them because the road is so narrow and they're in this ravine. So they're literally getting trampled by their own men who are hauling butt trying to get away.
Yes, exactly. The advance column was Commander Lieutenant Colonel Gage, since so well known as the governor of Massachusetts in 1775. This column was about 100 yards in advance of the second, which just had begun ascending the hill, and attack began. The main body, under the general in person, was but a few rods in the rear of this, and on hearing the firing, he proceeded forward to support the engaged party. Now you got the rear pushing up the front coming back to hit the rear. Oh, you got all
chaos.
Meanwhile, the extensive line of Indians upon the right flank made an onset from their section of the ravine, and from their superior numbers, the shock could not be withstood, and the column was immediately broken and began to retreat in disorder down the hill. Confusion and dismay ensued. No exertions of the officers could prevent the panic from spreading among the regular troops, and the fight was afterwards continued in the utmost irregular. Emboldened by the confusion of the English, the Indians now rushed upon them with their tomahawks, which after
and there's a bunch of them running at you.
Oh my
Think
God.
about that.
And the gunfire, and remember, this is not smokeless gunpowder. This is smoky gunpowder. I mean,
and having been to a couple of reenactments myself, when they shoot off those cannons, a couple of times, a couple of firings, and man, there is nothing but a cloud of smoke. And so imagine all these guys have fired their muskets, and so this ravine is full of smoke, and out of the smoke come these red men painted up with tomahawks screaming. So what would you do?
Well, I read in another spot here, the British, from the sides of the narrow road, the British were under fire and mistook their allies and fired upon them too. So the British were now so confused that they were killing their own people who were trying to fight in the smoke and the chaos. This was not a good thing on this road as the Indians came down the hill with their tomahawks and yelling, after 2 hours terminated the battle, and the field was left in procession. Not only the field of battle, but all the killed and many of the wounded, all the artillery, 11 pieces of cannon, and 11 cannons. Can you imagine that? They're hauling 11 cannons to go to this fort to blow it up, and you're hauling a cannon, you got horses there. You can't turn that cannon around in that road. You know what I mean? You got men scurrying, they're hiding under they're using the cannons and the wagons as protection against all the gunfire.
For cover. And it's not just gunfire.
Yes.
Remember, the British don't have bows and arrows, but the Indians, once they fire their guns, you got to stop and reload it and all that kind of stuff back in the day. So, but they had, they fired their gun and then pull an arrow out and start shooting with that. So they weren't done shooting, even though they fired a gun, they were still firing with arrows and things.
Yes. So 11 pieces of cannon and all the general's baggage and even the private papers and all the ammunition and provisions fell into the hands of the victors. All but the Virginians found for some time in the most wretched confusion, but the officers were more mournfully sacrificed, sometimes charging the enemy in a body by themselves, hoping by their example to draw out the men in a manner to repel their adversaries, but all to no purpose. And it is not doubted but that the confused multitude of regulars killed many of their companions, as they often fired 50 or 100 in a huddled together, seemingly for no other object but to get rid of their ammunition. Yeah.
I mean, can now think about this. They're huddled together, so that means they're kind of like fire in all directions.
Yeah, well, like you said, that the smoke is thick. They can't see what they're doing.
These folks got together in a huddle, loaded their weapons, and and somebody said, "Fire!"
yeah, they're firing somewhere. You know, up the line, down the line. Where I thought I seen an Indian up there. Shoot! You know, the Virginians fought in the Indian manner behind trees and converts. See, the colonists, the Virginians, the colonists that had been there, they kind of knew this kind of warfare already. Where the British guys, they were, you know, line up and fire. You know, you get killed, just keep firing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because the British were, you know, like the French, if you can think about it, they would line up, you know, and the Americans did the same thing in a way, but, you know, they lined up in rows and rows and rows and rows, the columns, and on the road, they might be 3 or 4 or 5 men wide, and they're stacked together, you know. Yeah. And so, and they're in close ranks, and they're all marching to the tune, you know, and they got a drummer and maybe even a fife player. So, you know, and here they are. And the Americans had, the only way they knew how to fight was the way they hunted.
Yes.
From behind trees and rocks and grass and culverts. And they, you know, they weren't trained in fighting in any way. They were hunters. And so, you know, this was easy pickings for them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Where the British, another thing, the British were conditioned that this is the only way to fight. You are the British Army, you fight this way. And the other guys were like, they had, all they knew was to kill the enemy, you know, any way they could. Yeah.
Well, the thing is that the British Army had been taught that because that's what worked best in battle, and they won lots of battles that way. But that was not the kind of fighting that they were doing here. You know what I mean? Okay. So, we're going to get to Braddock. After having, you only find this in these old books. After having 5 horses shot under him, General Braddock received a wound in his lung, in which he died on the 13th of July, 4 days after the battle, at Fort Cumberland, whither he had arrived with a party of his shattered army. Washington had been suffering from some time for arriving at the fatal battlefield from a fever. And in a letter which he wrote to his mother, dated July 18th, then he spoke of himself. So this is the letter he wrote. We marched to the place without any considerable loss, having only now then a straggler picked up by the French and a scouting Indians. When we came there, we were attacked by a party of French and Indians whose number, I presume, did not exceed 300 men, while ours consisted of about 1,300 well-armed troops, chiefly regular soldiers who were struck with such panic that they behaved with more cowardice than it is possible to conceive. The officers behaved gallantly in order to encourage their men, for which they suffered greatly. There being near 60 killed and wounded, a large portion of the number we had. So Yeah. So they had 86 officers, and 60 some were wounded and killed. Go figure. So anyway, he writes this letter to his mother, and that's how we know a lot of this stuff. But they did retreat, and when they got back, they made it back to when they made it back, the British they met up with Dunbar. Remember, Colonel Dunbar still had another 1,000 men in back. Remember, he took 1,300 men, and Dunbar had left with 1,000, and he was hauling more supplies and stuff. Okay, so when they arrived, there were 60 officers killed and wounded. Soldiers were scared. 456 men were killed. 422 wounded. 86 of the there was 86 officers. 26 were killed and 37 wounded. Colonel Dunbar took command. Out of that, believe it or not, there was 50 women that were with this group of men, of 1,300 men. There was 50 women in there, and all were killed except only 4 survived. Now on the Canadians and the Indians and the French there, 8 were killed of them, or the Canadians, 8 were killed, 4 wounded. Indians, 15 killed and 12 wounded. Wow, big difference. Talk about shooting ducks in a barrel, right?
Yeah.
So here's a list.
In a way, I feel sorry, but in a way, I don't. I mean, it's like it sucked for the people who thought they were doing the right thing. But here they are in a land they've never been to, in a countryside that it's unlike anything they're used to. And they're being attacked by these honest to God savages with whoops and arrows and stuff. It must have been to them terrifying.
Well, they had battled Indians before, but they usually wiped them out, pretty easily.
Right.
The thing is you got to remember, on their path, they are like a slow moving train. They're building a road as they went, literally cutting down trees and crossing rivers, and they got all these men, and they're moving like a turtle. And the Indians and stuff had all the time to prepare. Now there were several factors here. Now, if he'd known a lot of the things, if he would have just waited another month or two and attacked the fort would have been pretty much empty, because all the Indians would have went for their fall hunt. The Indians wouldn't have stayed.
Right.
Remember, he went into warring season. Remember, the Indians have seasons. There's hunting, fall hunt.
Right.
Winter, do nothing. Make clothes and skins and sit around and survive the winter. And then there's spring hunt. And then there's summer, which is warring season. Now, when did they attack? July was warring season. What else are you going to do? Let's go out and be brave and, go fight. That's what the Indians did. Okay, so here's how the regiment went. And you were asking about drummers and stuff. Here, there were drummers. Drummers and effectives present, 790. Wanting to complete this, it's now, maybe this. Okay, military branch present. There was officers, 7. Okay, officers present. Here, drummers present and effective. I don't know what effectives are. 33. Is that drummers and people, or just anybody?
That you what? Say it again.
Effectives. I don't know what effectives mean. I don't know what effectives mean. There was officers, surgeons, sergeants, corporals, and bombardiers. There's, gunner, military branch present. This is the different ones. The Royal Regiment of Artillery, the Virginia, Maryland, and North Carolina troops. This is how many were there in this group, and this is how many were there in the other group. Oh, I see what they're talking about. Each group. Here's the captain. Horatio Gates, Independent Company of New York, had 4 officers, 1 staff person, 3 sergeants, and 93, I guess, troops and drummers. So there you go. That's how they mapped it out. Here's this branch here. The detachment under Captain Robert Hind had 7 officers, 1 sergeant, 2 sergeants, 10 corporals and bombardiers, 18 gunners, 32 maltroses. I don't know what that is. 1 drummer, a total of 70 men. They had 1 wagon master, 1 master of horse. I don't know what that means. Master of horse. 1 commissionary, assistant commissionary, 1 conductor, 6 artifactors, 12, and a total of 22. This is the regiment. They were the whole gang, because it was
what did you say? The master of horse?
Yeah, master of horse.
He literally took care of the horse and all the tack and everything. That was his responsibility. Then, he unhooked the wagons, he, brushed, wiped, fed, kept. He was the person who kept the horse or horses. He made sure that they were shot if anything happened. He took care of the horses. Where, the guy that was driving, he was the cook and so that was his duty.
I see.
He was the duty master for the horse or horses. So, but anyway, that was his chief job.
Nice. Okay, cool. Yeah, so here's Braddock after he got, shot. 5 horses shot out from underneath him, and he was shot in the lung. And you can see out here, this looks like some Indians shooting, and here's their troops are marching by his side, and they're trying to get him out of there on some makeshift wagon, Here's their march and their defeat. As you can see, the ravines with the French and the Indians are up here. They had Indians up here, Indians and French, they were here. And then here's your ravine, and here's where everything happened. When you got the road, and here's where, you got turned around on this road. Look at this. You got to figure this is the mountains, and they're in this little valley, and they're just like shooting pigeons in a pen. You know what I mean?
And if you've ever been in the Appalachian Mountains, there are lots of nooks and crannies and stuff. And, when you get yourself into a situation like that, the landscape is against you. Yeah.
If you got the low ground, the high ground, you're just shooting down. You just shoot down. You can see them all. Where are you going to hide? These guys are all up higher, hide behind the trees. And these guys are on this nice road, Of course they're going to.
And they were literally throwing rocks at them, too. There were places where if there was a loose boulder, they'd roll it down the hill,
Exactly. Didn't have a chance. And then you got the Indians, flanking them and coming out and charging them with tomahawks and yelling and screaming and the smoke flying. Man, here's the picture, big trees. You're in this road, your captain, your general here gets killed or he's shot. He's laying on the ground. You're looking at it going, sir, you can give me an order? No, everybody's dying. Run for the hills. What do you do? If I was one of the soldiers, I'd get scared too. All the officers are dying. Everybody's dying. Okay, this is before they started out, they got these, how fancy. You got all these fancy horses, Here's a picture of what it might have looked like. You can probably see it in the background. So you can see the smoke, horses running everywhere. They're on this road, trees. You could see Indians could be behind any of these. Remember, the trees are big back then. Yeah, not little trees. These are big trees. You got a cannon. All these cannons that they had weren't going to do anybody any good because
they were useless.
Yeah, in a wooded area, they were useless.
And also, they blocked the road.
Yes, you can't turn things. You'd be better off to push wagons off. Just forget it. They make these pictures like this, but these guys, they're not moving the cannon forward to fight. They're moving to run. Braddock's defeat. Yes. Look at the scenery behind that. smoke filled. I mean, you don't know who's the enemy out there and who's not the enemy. You know what I'm saying?
Let me ask a question here.
Yes.
So in history, and this is just sort of rhetorical, in history, is Braddock looked as the poor guy, or is he looked at as the stupid idiot? You know what I mean? So were the French and Indians, because they won, they were the victors. But who is glorified in this situation? Was Braddock? Oh my God! It's sort of like Custer. Custer and all his men were killed. Yeah, but look what they did. So Braddock and his men, they were all killed, and well, a lot of them were. But so who's glorified in the situation? Is Braddock the one that's like, oh man, look what the British were failed to do, and those savages, chewed them up and killed them all, and who's on the side of history? Braddock with all the pictures? You don't see pictures of Indians. You know what I mean?
No, Braddock
where's the French guy with an Indian?
No, it was basically like you said. It was like a Custer's last stand. Braddock was heralded as like, oh my gosh,
a martyr.
A martyr, yeah. And the thing was it wiped out 2/3 of that military branch right there, and they didn't come back from that. They sat down and had this changed, like I was talking about before. It changed the war. It changed how the British were going to fight after that. They realized they couldn't haul cannons out. They couldn't just march into battle like that, because the Indians with a small group could wipe you out easily.
And also, how many officers were taken out? And so when you lose that many officers, you lose that British thing. So the officers that were left with all the wounded and all that, they had one surgeon. Was he still alive? Did he get killed? So there are all these wounded men with only a couple of people to, service them, to, do their wounds or whatever. So, the men that were wounded were being tended by folks, and that took them out of the picture. So, where was I going with that? Oh, I had a point. But anyway, so what you mean by being broken up? Imagine that 2/3 of your army is gone, and it takes a while back in those days to bring 2,000 men over to America. They just didn't pop up. They had to write back, sail back, get all the folks, put them on a boat, bring them back over. And that took months, if not years. So when you say it hurt them and really, upset them, not only did they learn that they can't fight that way, but they also, that being resupplied was going to take them quite a while. It might take almost a year for them to get resupplied. So, but anyway, I just want to, does that make sense?
Yes. Richard Red says, I bet a lot of wounded got shot as they would become a burden if wounds were too bad. Yeah. If you say you're in this battle, what happened is you're running. You can't, if you couldn't get, if somebody wasn't going to drag you along, the Indians were coming and they were going to kill you, scalp you, take all your stuff, and rip your guts out along the way, because that's what they did. Take the spoils of war. Because as I read this along, and I ain't going to go back into it and read more, but what happened is that the military retreated and the Indians didn't follow them. They stopped following and took the spoils of war. They were scalping, and they were taking the clothes and the things and all their stuff, the guns and the ammo and the powders, and because that hey, look, we scored. We only lost a few guys, and look at all the loot we got, right? Because that's what Indians were doing.
swords and knives and trinkets, personal items. It might have been something somebody wore around their neck. All the buttons, buttons and things on some of the uniforms were prized, and the belts and things, so they were having a good time.
Yes. Oh, yeah, exactly.
And if there were 400, killed, then that was, think about how long it would take you to go through 400 men to strip them. But anyway.
Well, exactly. Speaking of there, there was only like 400 to 600 Indians probably. And, that's like one guy for every Indian.
Yeah, really. Hey, go find your prize,
plus the horses and, whatever didn't get shot out there, I mean, they were eating that up, because, the French weren't out there doing that. They were probably like, well, we won, let the Indians get their things and, we'll move on.
Yeah, the French were like, we're going back to the fort.
Yeah.
Because the fort was just 10 miles behind them, And so in the English, look how far back they had to go to get to safety, as it were.
The big thing what happened was Braddock's big loss was his big win. The big win for Braddock was the road he made. The military road that he made opened up that area to the English settlers. And they did the work of, streaming in on this newly built road from Braddock. Otherwise they couldn't get, they couldn't go there before. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, because you couldn't get settlers to just, we're going to go carve a road. And,
do you have a map of that?
Yes, I do. Somewhere here.
Blow it up bigger. Zoom in. All right, hang on. So what's the British were coming from the right-hand side?
Yes, they came from Cumberland Gap right here.
All right, so they had to cross the Cattle whatever river. Keep going to the left. So go to where the ravine is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, see, they made this thing. They crossed rivers
and creeks. I'm telling you that, to go through there, that's some rough terrain. Now, what river is that?
The Collinsville. The young.
No, the river. What is that? The Yukakuchi or something?
Yukahaney.
But anyway, so they had to cross that river, and there wasn't a bridge unless they made it. A lot of times they just made rafts and would ferry people back and forth across the river if the river was too wide or too high. So it was easier to ferry folks back and forth across the river, and that's a big deal. That's a big ordeal. So keep going to the left.
Okay.
So where were they headed? Where was the fort at?
Okay, so here they come up. They had to cross Mount Pleasant. They made it to Madison, Irwin, Stewartsville, and then you get to Braddock's Field right here. Braddock's Field. This is where the everything took place. They had it. This is the Monongahela River. See, and they had to cross. They had to cross it twice. See, there's a bow in the river here, so they crossed once here. They crossed the second time. This is where the Indians were actually going to ambush them here. At this crossing, but they made it past there and they ambushed them right here in this ravine.
Right. So move to the left more. Where's the French?
There's no left. There's just...
Oh, I see. So, but I mean, to the left would be where the French had their fort.
Yeah. So
there you go.
Here's the fort, right? And we followed this road. Here's the Fort Cumberland, and they went up here, Fort Necessity, Braddock's Road, and then they made it up here. They were just about to Fort Duquesne. Here, see, there's a little gap right here. They didn't quite make it. And
All right,
but
so here's my point. By doing what they did, they opened it up to trade on the Erie Canal because there's that major river there with several forts. So by opening up that, what Braddock did was with that road that he built, he opened up that for trade, and not only for the settlers to go through, but folks could, they still bring in ships into Lake Erie. And
yeah,
I've not been to that area, but if the river's any decent size, they opened up a bunch of trade so they could resupply folks, not from the Atlantic Ocean, but by sailing up, and down into the Erie, Lake Erie, and then supply folks back up that river. You know what I mean? So I'm sure that really opened up trade.
yeah, oh yeah,
So
like
it was. So my point to my conversation about this, it was for what Braddock was moving towards. It was very strategic in its location.
absolutely, absolutely. Like I said, that's his accomplishments. They also, his accomplishments, even though he failed, accomplishments were made by learning new warfare. They made smaller companies, sent out more scouts, lighter infantry to battle, and instead of big giant cannons, you take a small cannon, you take a small group of 20, 30, 40 guys, maybe 100, and go battle. You don't bring 1,400 men and try to make it through the woods, because you're going to lose. You're going to get ambushed, and then, like you said, you got a pile of mush, because you got the front guys running to the back, and the back guys running to the front to help them, and now you're fishing a barrel.
Yep.
So not a good situation, man. I tell you, this was it was bad. Like I said, that these, it was just it says here, Braddock's example, officers kept trying to reform the units in regular to show their confines of the road, and of course, the confines of the road was what was bad, and the officers saying, charge, let's go, charge, and instead they were getting shot down because the men were saying, you're an idiot, you're standing on your horse, you're a big target.
And the Indians are whooping. I mean, they're giving the war cry, and
Yeah.
so you got 150 Indians doing a war cry. You're going to be scared poopless.
Yes.
I mean, it's going to be hard for you to be brave.
Well, yeah,
It just.
especially when you see all the men around you getting shot and killed and dying and yelling and screaming and smoke everywhere and people running, and you see Indians coming, and I mean, what a bad situation.
Yeah, buddy. To be pinned down like that, that would just be bad. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. It says in the skirmish, if okay, and after although some at the fort, oh yeah, because afterwards, the French went back to the fort, and they held their the Native Americans definitely okay, yeah. So anyway, that the thing is yeah, they just didn't have a chance, and then when they won, they knew they won, and then the British didn't come back, and then they didn't attack the French for quite a little while afterwards. It really made them think, hey, we can't win this. Of course, not long after that, the colonists were revolting, and the British were fighting their own people, pretty much. You know what I mean?
Right. But I mean, but the 2,000 men forces or whatever to be decimated to just like 300 or 400, because with all the wounded and everything, some of them wounded folks didn't make it. They lost limbs, and so they weren't able to go run and fight like so a lot of things were taken out. And not only that, but because they had to, turn and run, they lost supplies. And again, to be supplied, for their regiment or whatever was left, it took a while.
It did.
You know, so they didn't just go back and go to the store and go, okay, give me this. No, they were like, wait a minute, where's all that stuff you took? You know, so they had to wait on the next boat to get there. You know,
Exactly.
and that was in the 1700s. So you know, even though ships were, you know, by that time there was regular shipping is where I'm headed. You know, so you know they could expect a ship maybe every 2 or 3 weeks, or maybe oh, we got a ship due at the end of the month. You know, so they kind of knew what was coming. You know, and they put in their orders. One ship would go back, and there'd be somebody loading up and getting ready with another one. Well, look, we lost 1,000 men. What? Yeah, we need 1,000 men. So they'd have to get the soldiers ready, put them on a boat, get all the horses and equipment, and then ship them. So that took a while, you know. So I could see where the loss of Braddock was so severe back in those days that they were literally decimated.
Yep. And Scotty Boy points out not every ship made it either. Sea battles.
That's right. And a lot of the men didn't make it, from the voyage, even though by that time they were, they were getting the hang of it. They still had to, put up with the ocean.
They did. All right. I am done with Braddock. And we've got a story tonight. Did you get your PDF up?
I think.
Okay.
I've got a couple of stories. I think I got the same book that you did. My dear friends, we all know that, computers flub us up often. Or, they used to do it more often than they do. What's the story you got?
The 12 brothers and their uncle died on that day. Is that the one you got?
And what page are you on? No, because that ain't the one I'm on.
Which one are you
on? Last time, didn't I read?
You read Turkey in Search of a Wife.
Man Chased by Lizards.
Oh, maybe it was Chinan Chain. I don't know. Which one was that? Where? Okay, which one?
Because that's what page are you on in that?
Uncle and nephew. I don't know which. I'm on 491. That's for Uncle and Nephew. 491.
Oh no, we're down in the 500s. With last time
Man Chased by a Lizard. There you go.
Yeah, well, that was last week.
Okay, sorry.
So we, ladies and gentlemen, hobos and tramps, cross-eyed mosquitoes, and bow-legged ants, we are getting to the end of this book. I mean, literally.
Great.
So Man Chased by Lizards was last week.
Yeah.
And so moving on down the book, we have come to the Great Bear and the 6 Hunters, or the 7 Stars of the Dipper. Now, these are a succession of very short stories at the end of this book. This story is only like a page and a half. And then the next story in line is The Chipmunk and the Bear, which is a very short story. And again, there's one more after that, The Wren.
And then the book is over.
Yep, and then the one more story is the 12 Stars, and we're at the end of the, another one, the woman and the woman and dog in the moon.
Uh-huh.
A man conquers stone cold.
There's a few more. A couple more episodes.
Yeah, so how would you? Oh, and that's the end. Stone coats are frost and ice and great cold, and then it says the end, and that's the end of the book. So I mean, we are right there.
Right there, pretty soon.
So, how many of these would you like for me to read?
You just read whatever you want to read. You're up. You can read what you got to read.
Well, I know you like to, take some of the stories and put them out as shorts. So
Yes.
what I'll do
Yeah.
is
Stop.
we'll start with this one, and I'll just do a nice pregnant pause before I start the next one.
Yeah.
Okay,
When you
and
when
that
you
will give you.
yeah, when you end, say the end, and of course I'll come back on. I'll move the thing, and then we'll start again. Just whatever you want. But you read as
Oh
many
well, I'm
stories.
just going to continue, but I'm just going to get to the end of the story and say the end, and then a pregnant pause, and then I'll
Oh,
start the next one.
okay. Sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah,
I'm good with it.
rather than stopping and going and stopping and going. Okay.
All right. All right. You're up. I'm out of here. I'll be right.
So you know what a pregnant pause is, don't you?
I do. I do.
No, I'm just picking on you.
Okay.
All right, so our first story here then is the Great Bear and the Six Hunters, or the Seven Stars of the Dipper. 6 men went out hunting. For a long time they found no game. One of their number said he was sick. He was lazy. And they had to make a litter of 2 poles and a blanket, and 4 carried him. The 6th member of the party came behind, bringing the kettle. Besides this, each man had his own load to carry. At last, when the hunters were getting very hungry, they came upon bear tracks. They were so hungry that when they saw the tracks, they dropped their companion and their burdens, and each man ran as fast as he could after the bear. At first, the tracks looked old, but they thought, we will overtake the bear sometime. Later, they saw that the tracks couldn't be more than 3 days old. Farther the men went, the fresher the tracks were, till the men said, tomorrow we will overtake the bear. The man they carried so long was not tired, and when they dropped him and he knew he was going to be left, he jumped up and ran on after them. As he was fresher than they were, he soon passed them and killed the bear. The men in their race after the bear didn't notice that they were going up all the time. Many people saw them in the air as they ran along, always rising. When they overtook the bear and the lazy man, they had reached the sky, and there they had remained to this day, and can be seen any starlit night. The man who carried the kettle is in the bend of the dipper, the middle star in the handle, and a small star, which is the only one near any other of the dipper stars, is the kettle. The bear is at the lower outside corner. Every autumn, when the first frost comes, one can see on the leaves of the oak tree drops of oil, not water. And this is the oil and the blood of the bear. On seeing it, the Indians say, the lazy man has killed the bear. The end. Our next story is a short one. And this story has been told before, and it's a classic. The Chipmunk and the Bear. The bear thought herself a very powerful creature and was always trying to exhibit her strength before other animals. One day she got into a dispute with a chipmunk, and the chipmunk asked, Why do you boast so much? You have no great power." And the bear was angry and declared that she had such power that she could, if she wished, prevent the sun from rising in the morning. The chipmunk said, "You cannot." "Wait and see," replied the bear. The chipmunk was not to be fooled. He declared that he could wait. "We shall have the sun at the usual time," said he. When the sun came up, the chipmunk laughed and made fun of the bear and her boasting, till the bear was so terribly angry that she turned on the chipmunk. He escaped, for his burrow was close by. But as he reached it, the bear was so nearly upon him that she stretched out her paw to clutch him. But he slipped from under it and went into the hole. The next day, the chipmunk appeared with 3 marks on his back, marks of the bear's claws. And chipmunks carry those marks to this day. The end. Now, this next one, again, is a classic, and it's called The Wren. A boy once told that he must not shoot wrens, for the wren is a strange bird, difficult to hit, and mysterious in its ways. One day he went out to hunt when the sun was already beyond the middle of the sky. He soon saw a wren, and although warned, he determined to try his luck in killing it. He shot arrow after arrow, but no use. He could not hit the bird. Sometimes it dodged the arrows. Sometimes it flew to another tree. All his efforts were in vain. At last he hid behind a bush and waited till he had an excellent aim. Then he let his arrow fly. It just grazed the top of the bird's head, scratching the skin. The wren flew away fluttering. The boy watched till it disappeared behind a log at some distance in the thicket. Then he ran forward quickly. As he got near the log, he heard groans and low cries of pain. And looking over the log, he saw a man lying on the ground, apparently in great pain. His scalp was gone, and the whole top of his head was covered with blood. The boy, terribly frightened, ran home and told what had happened. People hurried back with him to aid the wounded man, but they could find no trace of him. The wren had flown. The wren is to this day called the bird without a scalp. It had turned itself into a man to avoid being captured while stunned with pain. The end. So imagine sitting around a campfire, it's dark time. It's a nice cool evening, but not cold. The stars are bright. And the children are sitting around listening to grandfather tell stories. And so, "Grandfather, tell us another story." And he says, "Listen, my children, the story of the 12 stars. 12 children were playing together on the grass near their father's cabins. They thought they would play a new game, and they invented one. They joined hands in a circle and danced, not swinging around, but standing in one place. As they danced, they sang, "We are dancing, we are dancing." Their parents were watching them and listening to their song, when all at once they noticed that their feet did not touch the ground. The parents were frightened and ran out to stop the dancing, but the children were already above their heads in the air and going higher and higher, always singing, "We are dancing, we are dancing." They went up until they disappeared, still holding hands, and they were next seen as 12 stars in the heavens, just above their father's cabins. One got a little out of the circle and therefore appears a little at one side of the others. The end. Now, as they were sitting around and listening to Grandfather, he said, "Here's a story. It's called The Woman and Dog in the Moon." A woman is sitting in the moon, and she is busy embroidering with porcupine quills. Near her is a bright fire, and over the fire hangs a kettle with something boiling in it. By her side sits a large dog that watches her continually. Once in a while, she gets up, lays aside her work, and stirs whatever is boiling in the kettle. While she is doing this, the dog unravels her work. This is going on all the time. As fast as the woman embroiders, the dog unravels. If she could finish her work, or if she ever does, the end of the world will come that instant. The end. Our next short story is called "A Man Conquers Stone Cold, Ice and Cold." Janoskawa, ice and cold. Once there was a village in a clearing in the forest. The people of that village had been told not to go north, for in the north, the stone coats, ice and cold, is where they lived, and they were man-eaters. One of the men said, "I am not afraid of those stone coats. Maybe there is good hunting in their country. I'm going there. If they trouble me, I'll kill them." Getting into their canoe, the man and his wife rowed up the river till they came to the country of the stone coats. Then the man pulled the canoe onto the bank, made a fire, and went hunting. While he was gone, a stone coat woman came to the camp. When the man's wife saw her, she was so frightened that she lost her senses. The stone coat woman pushed her around and said, "She must have been a long time dead." The woman came to her senses, ran to the river, pulled the canoe to the water, sprang into the canoe, and rowed away. The stone coat followed her to the bank of the river, but couldn't go farther, for she had no canoe. When the woman came to where her husband was, she said, "You boasted that you could kill the stone coats. Now show what you can do." The man built a fire and sharpened his flint knife. Soon, a stone coat man came to the opposite side of the river and called out, "You are the man who boasts that you can kill the stone coats. Come over and try your strength. I'll not go to you, said the man. You can come to me. After a good deal of talk, Stonecoat started to cross the river. When the river covered his head, he walked under the water. The man ran up the river to where he had seen a tree in the water. He crossed on the tree, ran along the bank, and when the Stonecoat came out of the water, shouted to him, "Where are you going? You must have turned around in the river." Stonecoat started back, and while he was under the water, the man crossed again on the tree. Then as the Stonecoat came to the bank, he shouted, "You foolish fellow, don't you know enough to cross the river?" After the man had fooled Stonecoat a number of times, he thought, "I'll let him come. I won't fool him again." When Stonecoat came out of the river, he looked at the man and asked, "What is that in your hand?" The man gave his hatchet to Stonecoat, who was looking at it, rubbed the edge of it with his hand, and without knowing it, gave the hatchet such power that it was harder than anything else in the world. "Show me what you can do with this thing," said Stonecoat. The man struck a rock. The rock split open. Stonecoat was terribly frightened. He thought that the power came from the man. "This man," said he in his mind, "is as strong as we are. Maybe he can kill us." He left the man, crossed the river, and went off. When he reached home and told his people what he had seen, they said, "We'll go away from here. We'll go towards the west and leave this man." The man and his wife lived undisturbed in the Stonecoat country till one day a Stonecoat woman came to the bark house they had built and said, "My husband and I quarreled, and I ran away. After he has looked everywhere else for me, he will come here. I will help you till he comes. Then you must help me." The next day, when the man started off to hunt, the Stonecoat woman went with him, and she brought him good luck. Each day she went with him, and each day he killed a great deal of game. One morning she said, "My husband will come today. When we begin to fight, you must put a stick in the fire and heat it red hot. And as soon as he overpowers and throws me, you must run the firebrand into his body." When Stonecoat came, he pulled up a tree. His wife pulled up another tree, and they began to fight, using the trees as clubs. At last, the woman fell. That minute, the man ran the firebrand into the Stonecoat's body and killed him. When the man and his wife were ready to go back to their village, the Stonecoat woman said, "When the Stonecoats went away, one of our women left her little boy. You must take him home with you." The man went to the place the Stonecoat indicated and found on a high cliff 2 trees. A swing hung between the trees, and in the swing sat a little Stonecoat boy, swinging back and forth and singing. The man felled the trees. The swing came down, and the boy too, but the boy still kept singing and swaying his body as though he were swinging. The man took the child home, and as he grew up and began to play with other boys, he showed his great strength. If he struck a boy, he killed him. Every child he hit, even in play, he killed. The people of the village told the man that he must send the boy back to his own people. The man sent for the Stonecoat woman, and she took the boy to his mother. The Stonecoats are frost, ice, and great cold. The end. And that's also the end of the book. So, my dear friends, we have read 511 pages
Wow.
over the course of, I guess it's taken us almost a year, 9 months at least, so it'll
Well,
be time for Uncle Dave to find us some some more stories.
oh yeah, I'm sure you can. You got plenty of books to choose from.
Yep.
But yeah,
And I can't believe I couldn't find this one. I was like, man, I've got this book. I know, because you sent it to me, and I could not find it.
yeah. So no, I'm sure that you got it somewhere on there, but no worries, I got it, and I'm glad I can send it to you over the internet. There you go, not lost.
Yeah, because we were able to, pick it up, by you sending it to me.
Stonecoats were. F. Kitty says, "Do we know what the Stonecoats were?"
They were frost and colds, but they were also, some of them were giants, and the giants were man-eaters. There's one story that was told a while back that one of the Stonecoats had, he had made a deal with whoever it was, and that he would not eat any more people. Do you remember that?
Yes. Yes.
It was. I can't tell you which story it was or who was involved, but one of them, the characters, he was like, "Look, I'll do this, but you got to quit eating people," And I was like, I thought that was just cool. You just got to quit eating people. So our first card out tonight is porcupine. Porcupine, porcupine, porcupine. One of these days I'm gonna, these aren't wrote down anywhere, but the story of porcupine and well, it was in one story it was a fox, in one story it was a coyote, and in another story it was mountain lion, and one story is mountain lion, bobcat, kind of. But the porcupine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing the cards.
Yep.
So, I'm shuffling as we're chatting. So, it'd be interesting. I'm going to look through some of these books now. As I'm chatting here, you sent me books that this plug-in that I've got is a bunch of books and stuff and stories in it. So do you have those in the same location?
Yeah.
So if I give you a book or something, that you can find it, right?
Yes, I
all
can.
Right.
I have all of them. I got them on a hard drive somewhere, so no worries, they're here.
But you got them in a place where if I say, "Oh, I found this one, let's read a story out of here," or whatever.
I have okay.
All right. Lizard. We know about the lizard, and it's interesting. I got a couple of cards here, and wow, there are a bunch of upside down ones tonight. Okie dokie. They say that's it. There's 5 cards. So 5-card draw, how about that? But let's see what we got here. My dear friends, I continue to pray that you all are doing well. And we always thank you that you come and show up and listen to us talk about the things that we do. And we honestly hope that, you get something out of it. And so tonight the cards are Porcupine, which is right side up. Then we have Badger, which is upside down. We haven't had Badger in a while. Well, in a bit recently. Then the next one we have is Whale, upside down. Then we have Lizard, right side up. And then we have our last card, number 17, upside down is Mountain Lion. I was just saying Mountain Lion and the Porcupine. So that's interesting that Porcupine's the first card and Mountain Lion's the last card. So in my head, you know, it's like, wow, there's my story about Porcupine, both characters. But anyway.
And we're all set now.
All right, so let me get the book out. Let me get a drink of coffee, like I need coffee.
Gotta have the coffee. It's all good.
And number 12. There's Mountain Lion. Porcupine. Porcupine is innocence. The south of the medicine wheel is the place of childlike innocence and humility. It is the home of playfulness and the position of Porcupine on the medicine wheel of life. Porcupine has many special qualities and very powerful medicine. The power of faith and trust. Pay attention to that. Faith and trust. The power of faith contains within it the ability to move mountains. The power of trust in life involves trusting that the Great Spirit has a divine plan. Trusting in it. Your task is to find the pathway that is most beneficial for you and that uses your greatest talents to further the plan. Your greatest talents. Trust can open doorways to the creation of space. The space thus created allows others to enter into the open and to open up their hearts to you, to share their gifts of love and joy and companionship. How about that? In choosing the Porcupine card, you have given yourself a gentle reminder not to get caught in the chaos of the adult world. I talked about the chaos earlier today in my little video. Don't get stuck in it. Don't get caught up in the chaos where fear, greed, and suffering are commonplace. The medicine in this card is that of relief from seriousness and severity. That's funny because the video I did earlier today, I was just laughing. I said, you got to laugh at this stuff. That's interesting. I pulled that card. Open your heart to those things that give you joy as a child, remembering the preciousness of fantasy and imagination and the making of some game or toy from nothing but scraps. Honor the playfulness of spirit that lets everyone win. That's just interesting. I made that video earlier. But the Null clan is supposed to, this card might have been for me. Sorry, y'all. But our sign for the Null clan is a porcupine. So, but anyway, that's still a good message. Keep joy in your heart and don't wallow in the chaos. And a lot of people have been talking about that these days. you know, in all different kinds of forms, you know, in different podcasts and things to stay out of the chaos. So our next one is badger. Now, here we go from aggressiveness. Aggressiveness. We go, badger is aggressiveness. But we go, you know, from playfulness of badger and innocence to, a porcupine to badger and aggressiveness. Badger is vicious and attacks with powerful aggression. Badger is quick to anger and quicker to pounce. The power of badger's medicine is aggressiveness and the willingness to fight for what it wants and what is necessary. The very thought of facing a badger makes other animals run for cover. And like skunk, badger's reputation precedes it. Its hissing fangs will tear less aggressive opponents to shreds. Now, the porcupine does not attack anything, so we go from innocence to aggressiveness in one card. But, you know, the porcupine is also known for, you know, its reputation. You know, you ain't going to mess with that critter right over there. So if badger is a part of your medicine, you are quick to express your feelings and you do not care what the consequences are. Badger people oftentimes insist on carrying the ball. This attitude, however, doesn't bode well for the rest of the team. If badger is upside down, which it is, it says, whoops, here comes badger upside down and fuming. This could mean that you are being chewed out by somebody else, or that you have expressed your anger in an unhealthy way. If this applies to you, remember that all anger stems from anger towards the self. It is an anger of helplessness that is the misdirected towards others. If you are angry at a coworker or whatever, you are probably the one who gave away your secret. If you are angry at your children for disobeying, it is usually anger that stems from fear for the children's well-being. This self-anger condition is usually present when you have silly accidents, falls, cuts, and scrapes, or when you find yourself bumping into furniture. Badger, in the contrary position, can issue in a time of reflection on what you feel helpless about. Now, the porcupine is saying, you know, stay out of the chaos. Don't be fearful. Remember joyousness. And here's Badger telling you that this might be a time of reflection. Is it your lack of aggressiveness or initiative? Is it your fear? There's fear coming in. Is it your fear of being blasted or belittled if you try a new idea? Maybe it's time that when you need to get in touch with your own jealousy or envy of others who are willing to put themselves on top through hard work. In other words, you say, well, I can see, you know, Sister Jane over there, you know, she worked hard and she got what she, you know, what she was looking for. And I wish I had her gumption, you know, that's what this means. In another contrast, contrary badger could be calling you to use herbs and roots to heal your body. Now, this can go for all of us. Badger reverse may also be putting you on notice to be aware of those areas of your life that need the input of someone else's aggressiveness. In any case, contrary badger speaks of a need for more aggressive action in your life. So be joyful and stay out of the chaos, and that's keeping a lot of people down. And at the moment, you know, folks need to, you know, say, well, wait a minute, you know, and be more aggressive in your actions. Not necessarily mean, but get up off your seat. Now, the next one is whale upside down. Whales, number 41 in our book of stuff. And it's again upside down. Whale is the record keeper. Whale of mighty oceans, you have seen it all. Secrets of the ages are heard within your call. Teach me how to hear your words and how to understand the very roots of history of when our world began. Whale is the record keeper. Whale is very much like a swimming library, and whale carries the history of Mother Earth and is said to have been placed here by the ancients from the dog star Sirius. Biologists say that whale is a mammal and very possibly lived on land millions and millions of years ago. In tribal legend, whales' move into the ocean happened when the earth shifted and Lemuria, the motherland, went below the waves. All the petroglyphs speak of the motherland, Mu, and the disaster that brought the red race to North America from the west beyond the great waters. The symbols in the petroglyphs speak of the rivers and mountains crossed by our ancestors when they sought solid ground as the water receded. Now, contrary whale is this. If a whale has beached itself in your cards, the contrary medicine implies that you are not following your sonar or your own honing device. On some level, you have forgotten that you hold all the answers you need to survive and to grow and to claim the power of your chosen destiny. So, talking about destiny, Badger was just like, be more aggressive in it. And, Porcupine is saying, stay out of chaos and fear. So fear, quit being fearful and do what you got to do. It may be that you're having to deal with a lot of chatter in your head and cannot get to your personal records. That's happening with a lot of folks these days. If so, you may need to use other sounds to enter into the silence. That's interesting. You have to use other sounds to enter the silence, like chanting or humming or whatever. The drum or rattle, the Indian flute, or the sounds of nature may help you. The call of whale is the lullaby of the tides. Rock yourself gently and float into the world of the sea. Flow with the waters of time and collect your answers. So if you're having trouble, what do I do? What's coming up? Blah, blah, blah. Then, float in your head a little bit and find the answer because it's there. Flow with the water of time and collect your answers. They are the only truth that will lead you to your personal pathway of knowing. Contrary whale is saying that you must desire to know. If you're apathetic in too many ways, it's like, well, I don't know. One of these days I'll learn about, medicinal plants. No, it's that you must desire to know something. How bad do you want the information? You must seek the whale song within you. In hearing whales call, you will connect to the ancients on a cellular level. That's the quantum, my friends. And then as you relax into the flow of the song's rhythm, you'll begin to open your unique library of records. That's your Akashic records, right? Not somebody else's. Don't go there. It may not come all at once, and it may take some practice. But if you hold that desire to know close to your heart, in other words, you want to know something bad enough, it's a desire. You hold it close to your heart. Then whale is there. Now, the next one is lizard, number 36 in the book. Now, lizard likes to hide under the I can sort of tell part of the tale without even looking at the book. So it's a hot day, and Lizard is dreaming. He's under a rock, and a snake comes in and says, "Hey, can I share the rock?" And Lizard says, "Sure." And Snake says, "But, after a while," he goes, "your eyes are closed. You're sleeping." And Lizard says, "No, I'm not. I'm dreaming." And Snake said, "Well, wait, what's the difference?" And then he said, "Oh, Snake, you are such a silly serpent. I'm not sleeping. I'm dreaming." Snake wanted to know what the difference was, so Lizard explained, "Dreaming is going into the future. I go to where future lives. You see, that is why I know you won't eat me today. I dreamed you, and I know you're full of a mouse." Snake was taken aback. He said, "Why, Lizard, you're exactly right. I wondered why you said you would share your rock with me." Lizard laughed and said, "Snake, you are looking for shade, and I'm looking for shadow. Shadow is where the dreams live. Lizard medicine is the shadow side of reality, where your dreams are reviewed before you decide to manifest them into reality." So the cards are saying, stop being in chaos and fear, and be aggressive, because apparently Badger's upside down and says, "You ain't doing enough." And Whale is like, you need this song to go ahead and do what you're supposed to be doing. And you got to access your own records. And here, and also, Whale is talking about, sort of the dream time. You got to go into the silence. And here's Lizard saying, "Hey, you got to go into the dream time as well." Dreaming is Lizard. So Lizard said, "Snake, you are looking for shade, and I'm looking for shadow. Shadow is where the dreams live. Lizard medicine is the shadow side of reality, where your dreams are reviewed before you decide to manifest them physically." So you're leading up to this. You've got some good thoughts, but you got to dream them first. You got to think about them, in other words, But now the contrary, Lizard's upside down. So if Lizard is turned up in the contrary position, you may be having a nightmare, which this is a sign of inner conflict. Look to the nightmare for a clue to the nature of this conflict. What are the feelings your nightmare causes? Now, Whale was saying, use the song to go into the mystery, right? Breathe through those feelings and let the sense flow out of your body. See the truth to what your nightmare is suggesting. It could be the simple message that you are confronting your fears. There's the word fear again, and therefore do not need to experience the nightmarish events in your day-to-day life. Another message of Lizard reversed is that you may need more sleep or dream time. It could also imply that you have a lack of dreams for your future. That's interesting. There are a lot of folks who are scared of the future and what's going to come, and that's that fear. Imagination is the door to all new ideas and creations. As you examine the dreaming process, you will find that the subconscious is processing all of the recorded messages it holds concerning the events you have experienced during the day and in your lifetime. These messages can be suppressed feelings bringing inner conflict. There's that fear the porcupine's warning us about, right? In one sense, contrary Lizard is insisting that you look to your imagination for a new experience. And that could get you out of a funky mood too. This is necessary when life becomes dull or full of boredom. All levels of awareness are accessible through dreams. Pay attention to that. I got to read it again. All levels of awareness are accessible through dreams. Remember, life is not always what it seems. Are you the dreamer, or are you being dreamed? Now, the last card is Mountain Lion, number 17. So, y'all quit worrying about stuff and get out of the chaos. And if you're stuck in a situation, sometimes it's like, you got to start a new project that maybe you've never thought of before. Maybe, like the story was that, you got to start, doing needlepoint or something, do something different, do something exciting. Well, I've always wanted to try, to jump off a cliff or something. Well, as long as you're safe about it. And Mountain Lion is leadership. And Mountain Lion can be very difficult power totem for you to have because it places you in a position to be a target for the problems of others. You could be blamed for things going wrong, or for always taking charge of a situation when others can't. You could become the perfect justification for the insecurities of others. So Mountain Lion is leadership. But it's upside down. So let's see what it says. If your Mountain Lion is reversed, you may be playing with fire. A leader who tries to lead through tyranny or dictatorship has forgotten the medicine of truth. Through the reversal of this medicine, you may be tricked into believing that nothing else has validity except the ideas you created by yourself. Now, all these other cards are telling you to go into the dream time and everything and to find your answers there. So it says, you may be tricked into believing that nothing else has validity except the ideas you created. So if you're in the dream time and you're creating stuff, and this sounds like a good idea, maybe it ain't. Let's see. Watch out, Rome crumbled for this very reason. If this aspect of the contrary medicine does not apply to your situation, look at other messages which Mountain Lion brings. If you are avoiding taking your place of leadership, if you're avoiding it, it could be because the whole idea scares you silly. This is a normal state of affairs for one who has never been a leader before. Now, a leader can be for yourself. It doesn't mean that you're going to be in charge of a bunch of people are going to, lead a platoon of people to go do something. No, leadership can be yourself to get over whatever it is these other cards are talking about. So you need leadership over the self, okay? Another message of Mountain Lion Reverse is to not let yourself be led down the primrose path by some other leader who is abusing their power. If you want to put yourself on the road to being a leader in your own right, within your own self, then ask the questions of anyone to whom you have been given your authority. Have you given your authority away to somebody else? See if they carry the medicine of Mountain Lion, and whether you can grow into your own leadership by observing how others do it. So if you're afraid of what you're doing, here's the, be aggressive, like Badger says. Whale is saying that the answer is within your dream time. Lizard is also expressing, go into that dream time. And the answers are there. And Mountain Lion's saying, you need to take a leadership role within yourself. Get up and do it, my friends. Don't be scared. But keep an eye on what's going on. So interesting cards for this morning because it's past 12 now. I hope that didn't go too long.
We're right about 2 hours. Believe it or not. Well, we got a late start.
Oh, that's right. There you go. So 2 hours and 4 minutes. Not bad. So I hope those cards mean something to you, because we all know the world is changing, every minute, every day. We never know what's coming up next. And to a lot of folks, that's scary as hell. And like that little video I did earlier today, I'm just laughing myself because it is grab the popcorn, because it's better. Talk about reality TV. We just watch the world as they fumble along, so, but don't get caught up in that chatter. There are still things that you and we can do as people within ourselves. I got a dream to get my canoe back in the water, and I'm working on it. It's slow. So you might, whatever the dream is my point. It ain't about me and my canoe, but, being retired and what do I have to look for in life? I look out the window every day and I go, it's just another day. But unless I do something, unless I put something in the pot, unless I dream of something and go, well, what am I don't know. I don't want to sit here tomorrow. I want to do something. What do you want to do? Well, I don't know. I got to dream up something. And so in everyday time, you got to dream up stuff for your journey, whatever that might be. And I know folks are, they go to work and they do their daily thing, and that's great. But in that, is there any future? What do you have, in your brain? Because you can do a mundane job if you know that the money that you're making, you're saving up a little bit for something, and you're saving up a little bit for something, and you're saving up a little, or maybe a big bunch of something. But, so you got a plan, you got a dream that's out there in the lizard land. You have to dream it before you can bring it into reality. So it's not something that can, and you have to be practical. Is your dream really, can you really achieve this? So then there are some dreams that, you can do it, but it's really hard. And if you think you can go through the maze, go for it. Cheers.
Right. That's right. I like it. You got a show tonight?
Yep, in a little bit. I'm going to go get supper that we both missed.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us tonight. We'll be back same time, same place next week. There you go.
Thank you, Robert.
That's right. I got home and a lickety split, threw on my my hat and my Milky Way shirt, and away I am. I'm ready to go. And not too fast at all. Boy, I'm just cutting it close. But hey, it is what it is. But thank you, everybody, for joining me. And we'll be back. I'll be back on Saturday night, and we'll be back next week, same time. But don't forget, I got a show with Nina this week on Sunday, Sunday Live. Join me there. Join me Saturday night. But everybody, go out and do some gardening. Do those good things. Put some vegetables in so you can share them later with other people. It's really, really an important thing to do, to give back to the community. That's why I'm growing a big ass garden, so I can give a lot of vegetables and things and food to other people. I can feed the world, or at least my own little community. It's a good thing. So with that, everybody, be nice to somebody else. Be nice to yourself. Remember, be the frequency you want to receive. Love you all, everybody. Peace, everyone.
Cheers.